Well, the U.S. says ISIL is being driven back by airstrikes and more effective fighting on the ground. The two maps issued by the Pentagon show a dramatic difference since August, when the airstrikes began. And back then, the Islamic State covered huge areas of eastern Syria as well as northern and western Iraq. The two maps issued by the Pentagon show a dramatic difference since August, when the airstrikes began. Back then, the Islamic State covered huge areas of eastern Syria and north and western Iraq. Some of them are very close to Baghdad, causing an influx of refugees trying to escape as ISIL makes inroads in Anbar province. Well, Howard Gambril Clark is with us with the Stability Institute, and he joins us from Washington. Howard, it's always good to have you on the show. I just want to start off with some news that just came across the wires recently, and I'm sure you have heard this as well. We need your comment on it. Apparently, we've heard that at least 30 Egyptian Christians have been beheaded in Libya. Tell us about that, and we're talking about some ground being gained by allies. What does this tell you?
Well, I think that, 25 to 30% of ground being taken back from Islamic State, it certainly can be seen as a tactical or towards a tactical victory. But the Islamic State does not miss a beat. As soon as this was announced, we have the beheadings in Libya. We have reports of training camps in Mauritania. We have the bomb outside the U.S. consulate in Erbil. We have increased bombings, attacks inside Baghdad, the capital itself. We have, as McCain has recently talked about, or really focused in on, the importance of the city of Ramadi, the capital of the Anbar province, where Islamic State is viciously trying to take over. We also had a bombing in Jalalabad that killed 32 and injured 100 just within the last 48 hours that Islamic State is claiming. We also have a homegrown Islamic State-inspired attack that was thwarted in Australia. And all of this happening since, or a lot of this has been being talked about, and operations have increased since the announcement by the Pentagon.
You know, Howard, I want to put this map up again so our viewers can see it, exactly what has transpired since the Pentagon is telling us that, ground has been taken back. If we can get that map up there, that'll be good for our viewers to see, because it's interesting. I'm looking at the map. They're saying 20% has been taken back. When I look at that map, it doesn't even seem like it's that much. I mean, I can compare that to a pimple on the rear end of a rhinoceros. It doesn't seem like that much to me at all. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think, we have to look at the geography. I mean, any percent taken away, certainly that's not a bad thing. But we also have to look at population centers. And that is that if you see they still own Mosul, they're trying to own Ramadi, they're conducting, perhaps an increase of attacks in Erbil. And that would be a huge, if they had more of a presence there, that'd be a huge setback for the Kurds. So certainly, it's not that much territory. It's better than nothing. But of course, the other question is, at what price is this territory being taken? Because certainly we have a lot of this is drone strikes, air strikes that are led by the U.S.-led coalition.
Right.
But in addition to that, we have the Iraqi military, and we have the Shia militias, and there are reports of crimes against humanity, certainly things that are being done, beheadings, hangings, and pictures of that may actually help to increase sectarian violence in those areas that have been retaken.
Howard, one thing of good note, looking on that map there, some territory retaken around and near the border of Turkey, and that's certainly a good news. But, we're also talking about areas that are alarmingly close to Baghdad. Tell us what's going on in and around Baghdad. Is ISIL strengthening its position in the Anbar province?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a number of ways that they want to really shape operations in and around Baghdad. One is conducting, a low-grade insurgency within Baghdad, bombings, which have perhaps increased in the past week. Another way is to try to control the water that goes to the capital, as well as the electricity that goes to the capital. And this is something they can do better if they had control of areas or cities like Ramadi.
Howard, I'm concerned more about boots on the ground. Of course, we're talking about Iraqi forces down there and whatever. In terms of that being very effective, there's been a lot of concern about whether Iraqi forces would be well enough equipped and would have the stomach for the fight for ISIL and outside of air attacks. How's that going?
Well, I think a lot of the fighting is being done by the actual Shia militias, who have been called into action from the highest leadership, religious in Iran and in Iraq, from the Badr Brigade all the way to the sort of the larger coalition of Shia militias. So a lot of the fighting is being done by them. The Iraqi military, I think that at least even just in the last few months, a lot of the training the U.S. has done for the Iraqi officers, NCOs, and soldiers, I think also makes them at least a little more savvy, if perhaps not as driven, but a little more savvy. At the same time, it's going to be really interesting to see whether or not the Iraqi military is going to want to work more with the Sunni tribes that are already fighting Islamic State.
Okay, I guess that's good news. But I just want real quickly before we end here, a name out of the past here. Correct me if I'm wrong. Ibrahim al-Duri. I remember him being part of Saddam Hussein's regime there. He was one of the people in the deck of cards of people that the U.S. and coalition allies were looking for. He was killed last week. What's the significance of this at this point?
I think the significance is somewhat symbolic. This guy has been, he was part of the revolution in 1968 when the Ba'aths came to power in Baghdad. And he was Saddam's really #2 guy. He was the second commander-in-chief to the commander-in-chief, as well as the vice chairman of the Revolutionary Command Council. And when Saddam was executed in 2006, he really took over the Ba'ath Party, of course, in absence. And he, perhaps not running day-to-day operations in the efforts of the Sunni nationalist elements of the opposition, of the insurgency, but certainly his name, again, had a lot of symbolic strength in trying to get those Sunni nationalists, those non-radicalized elements in Western Iraq to join groups like Islamic State and before that Al-Qaeda in Iraq.
Howard Gambril Clark live joining us in Washington. Howard, thank you so much.
Thank you, Julian.